Thank you for attending, everyone. My second week of our series, and I encourage you to send in your questions. My goal here is our mission statement: having fun, improving lives. And when we mean having fun, our theory is that on Monday morning, if you're going to work and you're not looking forward to it, you're going to the wrong place. So thank God it's Friday's not accurate. It's thank God it's Monday. And we're here to change lives, and that includes our investors, our employees, our franchisees, our customers, our vendors, and the world around us. That's our mission statement, and that's also the mission statement of this webinar. I have a couple questions to start today off with, and the first one comes from Leslie, and the question is, what's the secret of my success? And, I've been asked that question thousands of times, and I always try to answer it. And I'm going to try to answer it a little bit for you today, but I love top 10 lists. And there's no one secret of success. And even if there was, and let's pretend there's 10 important things, then why do you want to only know one? Why don't you want to know the other 5, 6, 7, 10 things that are most important? So I love top 10 lists, and we're one of the few franchise chains I am in my career that develop top 10 lists of, for example, during the tax business, we have top 10 most important things to do during the tax season. And then we have top 10 most important things to do after the tax season until from May to December. So I'm going to come up, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to come up with the top 10 secrets of success. So I'm not just going to limit in the future. I'm not going to just limit it to one thing, because it's very obscure as to which one is the most important. Probably depends on timing. In the future, I'm going to come up with the top 10 secrets of saying that. I think the most important key to success in anything is perseverance. I've never seen anyone skate through life, get through life without any barriers. Everyone has barriers to overcome, and success isn't related to how much you achieve in life. It's to the barriers that you overcome. You're going to get knocked down, I assure you. In the hundreds of thousands of people I've known in my life, we've had hundreds of thousands of employees in my organizations with tens of thousands of offices. I've never seen anyone skate. So you're going to get knocked down. Winners always get up, and most eventually stay down and don't get up and don't go the next step. So number one most important key to success is perseverance, overcoming adversity. I can assure you, we're all going to face adversity and continue to face adversity. Rarely a day goes by that I'm not facing adversity. In fact, probably no day goes by that I'm not facing adversity. So that's my number one secret of success. More to come. A second question came from Fatima, and she asks, how do franchisors expect franchisees to pay royalties from day one? Well, let me say it this way: there are almost no franchises or businesses or industries I've ever seen that are profitable from day one. But I have to say this, that Zoom and Grumman is such an exception that I'm just amazed that industry, the whole pet industry, just surprises me that wherever in the country that we have prospective franchisees joining us, I have them call and ask around how long it would take to get their dog groomed. And virtually everywhere in the country, and we're already in 25 states and 70 cities, virtually everywhere in the country, it's 3 weeks or longer. There is such a demand for this industry. When we brought in our first new franchise in August of 2021, with less than $500 of dollars spent in marketing, she was booked 3 weeks in advance. So it's amazing that it's cash flow positive from day one. But that is a total anomaly. It doesn't happen in any other industry that I've been in. And I've done tax returns as a taxpayer. We've done 100 million tax returns for all kinds of industries, thousands of different, or at least hundreds, if not thousands of different industries. So let me say it this way: that if you're not profitable from day one, then you just include the costs that are in that first month or 2 or 3 or however many long it takes you to get profitable. That's just the cost of investment in the business. So when you start up a business, you're going to have equipment, and often you're going to have leasing costs and security deposits and payroll costs and marketing costs and grand opening marketing. You're going to have costs, and every business has startup costs. And if you have to pay any expense before you're cash flow positive, that's just part of the startup costs. So then, for example, if I invested $75,000 in starting up a business and I lost $5,000 a month for the first 5 months, and then before I was profitable, then my startup cost wouldn't be $75,000. It would be 5,000 times 5 months, 25,000 plus 75,000. It would be $100,000. I would just consider it that. But in one of our franchise systems, we have that you don't have to pay any royalties for the first 6 months to help you as the franchisee have less startup costs going into the franchise system. So there's lots of ways to handle that, but the typical way in almost every business is if you have losses from any expense, whether it's as I said, whether it's rent or payroll or equipment or royalties, then it's just part of the investment in the business. One of the people I'm mentoring is beginning to explode and grow and starting to hire people. And they asked me, and he was with me at Liberty Tax, and he asked me, he said, now he has about 8 or 9 or 10 employees. He said, you had a great culture at Liberty Tax when I was there. And he left 10 years ago. And he was one of the largest franchisees at Liberty Tax. But he's in a new industry. And he said, how did you develop the culture? So today I want to talk about developing culture, the importance of developing culture, and how to develop culture. And I didn't really learn about culture until I was in my late 30s, and the importance of culture. I kind of innately understood that my job as an employer wasn't just to have employees do what I said, and employees weren't limited to or required to make me happy, simply make me happy. It's a mutual relationship with a franchisor-franchisee relationship. Not only do I have to the employees have to make me happy, I have to make them happy. I have to create a work environment that they enjoy and they can function successfully in. And so I always have acted like that. I was a manager. First time I was a manager, I was 1971. I was managing 10 H&R Block locations. I was in my second year of being a part-time preparer at H&R Block, and my manager had anxiety attacks. Well, in 1971, they hadn't invented anxiety attacks yet. So they thought he had a heart attack. And they put him into the hospital for a couple of weeks. And the management at Block came to me and said, would you leave college and manage these 10 H&R Block locations? And so I talked to my parents. They said, go for it. So that was really the start of my management career, was when I was in college and started as managing 10 H&R Block locations. And I've always treated that way. I always did a great job with my employees, and that's one reason we call it loyalty brands. But I never put two and two together until I saw an article in the late 80s, probably 1988, in the Wall Street Journal. And it talked about how this grocery chain, Wegmans, had incredible market share. They had about 2/3 of market share of the grocery industry in upstate New York. So I said, this may be a good opportunity to learn. And so I took two of my top people in Jackson Hewitt, and we went to Rochester, New York, and spent a couple hours in a Wegmans location. My most illuminating conversation came, there was a woman there that had a platter, had a tray, and she was passing out like crackers and cheese or something like that to passerbys. And those of you that are old enough may remember back in last century, that happened a lot. You go into a grocery store and you would get samples of things, or even if you're in New York walking down the sidewalk, you get a little candy bar or crackers and cheese or some little taste of something. Free samples back in the 21st century were the way to market, the way a lot of companies market. And I still love that today. That's mostly disappeared to my experience, customer experience. But I talked to that woman for a while, and she's really the person that illuminated to me the importance of culture. And she was very personable, very outgoing. And I said, well, how long you been here and how do you like it? And are the wages you make here comparable to the other grocery chains? And she said, yes. And I said, well, why do you work here? And she said, because everyone it's like a family. It's like a family, and it's fun, and it's more fun than the other companies. So in the conversation, I asked her, what happens if someone joins and they're not having fun and they don't fit in, that they're toxic, they hurt everyone else's fun? Well, she said, well, as a matter of fact, what happens is, and that happens all the time, we're not always 100% right in hiring people. My observance is that on a job interview, people are better than they are at any other minute in their life. Everyone is the greatest thing since sliced bread on their job interview. I've never interviewed anyone that was as good as they sounded like they were on their interview. So even myself, in my 55-year career, I'm only right 2 out of 3 times, maybe, if I'm hiring people. And so she said, if they hire the wrong person, they feel like outcasts. They feel left out. And I understood that, and I really got it about a few years ago, because I always heard this phrase. I often heard this phrase then when I was talking about, in my franchise system, I was talking about great franchisees. And then people would say, the people that weren't great franchisees, the people that weren't following the system would say, well, that person just drank the Kool-Aid. They believe everything you say. And that used to offend me. And then it wasn't until a few years ago that I thought, well, that's right. The people that follow the system are the superstar. The non-believers, the people that don't listen, they're the losers. They fail. you have to listen. You're supposed to listen 100%. My job's to give you the best system in the industry. And the people that don't listen are going to fail because that's not my job, is to give you the best system in the industry. And if I do that, and I've been doing that for 55 years, your job is to listen and follow the system. And so, yes, they're going to act like good Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, and they're going to follow the leader and be positive about it. And so I realized right then a terrific asset in business. And when I think about it today, I think that today, and by 1988, it had already started happening. Kmart was starting to decline. They were about the same size. In the late 80s, Sears was #1 retailer in the world. And about in the late 80s, Kmart passed them to become #1, and then Walmart passed Kmart, and the rest is history. And so Walmart has been an incredible success story for ever since, and for its entire existence. Walmart's been an incredible success story. It's the largest employer on the planet, I believe. And Kmart is struggling and going down the toilet, and they've been struggling for decades, for 30 years. And I used to wonder, what's the difference in the top people, the top executives? There's an executive committee, or it could be one person or 5 people or 10 people. There's an executive person or committee at Walmart, and there's an executive person or committee at Kmart. And why is Walmart Walmart and Kmart Kmart? What's the difference? Are the people at Walmart, are they smarter? Are they more educated? Are they more experienced? And I said, obviously not. You could hire the smartest person. You could hire the most experienced person. You could hire the most educated person. That's not what sets them apart. And Steve Jobs wasn't the smartest guy ever in computers, or Bill Gates, and they'll gladly admit that. They weren't the smartest, they weren't the most experienced, they weren't the most educated. In fact, they didn't even get college degrees. Like I didn't get a college degree, right? I'm not the most educated guy in tax. I'm just the most successful guy in tax. And you learn there's no CEO school in this country except for the school of hard knocks. And that's how you learn, by all the mistakes that you've made. But back to culture, and I realized at that point, the difference in the executives at Walmart, I learned from that trip to Wegmans in 1988 that it's culture. And culture is an asset that needs to be nurtured and built and thought about. And you have to pay attention to. You have this balance sheet when you have a company, and I've had 2 public companies, $1 billion company and $500 million company. And you have these assets. You have customer lists, you have cash, you have equipment, you have notes receivable, you have lots of assets. One of the assets that could be the most important, that isn't listed there, that's nebulous and it's hard to measure. It's impossible to measure. It's called culture. And it's treating employees. I read a book in 1995, I think, called Nuts, about the development of Southwest Airlines by Herb Kelleher. And up until I read his book in the 90s, I had thought that I lived customers #1, customers #1, customers #1. In fact, in Jackson Hewitt, when we came out with our mission statement, at Jackson Hewitt was winning customers for life, winning customers for life. So that's how focused we were on customers. But Herb Kelleher said it correctly, and I'd really lived this, but not known I was living this. But he said, if you're if you want your customers to be treated as number one, you have to treat your employees as number one. And so that's what culture is servant leadership. When what I do with my staff is, I try to do it, is to set a budget that we agree on, and you have X number of dollars to spend, and you have X number of expectations. And then once you have your parameters of our principles and cash you're going to spend and number of employees, including employees and other resources, software and everything, then your job is to achieve results. And my job, once we agree on those parameters, is to stand back and not micromanage you and help you. That builds strong culture. One of my employees that now been with me 36 years, she came to me and she reported to me in 1990, and I was doing her review. And at the end of every review, it's standard to say, okay, I reviewed her, and then I said, okay, now what can I do to make your job easier to help you? And she said, you know what you can do? That lots of times you know the answer, and you let me struggle. And sometimes I make mistakes. And you could have told me up front what the right answer was. Well, I said, if I tell you what everything to do, I'm usually going to be right. Maybe I'm going to be right a high percentage of the time. But how are you going to learn? People learn from their mistakes. And by the way, if I don't tell you how to do it, and I do tell you, or we agree on what to accomplish, right? We need you're a operations person, and you need, in this office, you need 1,000 texters. And if I just say the goal is 1,000 texters, then now you got to go out and make that happen. And you have all the tools and resources and knowledge, but you know what? You're going to be clever enough to come up with and tweak it in a different way than I wouldn't have. And sometimes you're going to be right, and sometimes you're going to be wrong. I'm going to be watching. I'm not going to let you make a fatal mistake. I'm not going to let you ruin the company, but I'm going to let you make mistakes in order for you to grow. And not only are you going to grow and get better at your job, but I guarantee that if you and I set a goal and I don't tell you exactly what to do, right? You need to spend $5,000 on guerrilla marketing. You need to spend $4,000 on payroll. You need to, if I don't, or you need to have exactly every detail, then it's not going to be as good as if the two of us combine. Because I believe that if two smart people don't agree that on an important business issue, then neither one is 100% right. I'm rarely 100% right or 100% wrong. The answer is somewhere in between. I might be 95% right, or you might be 95% right. But you have to let people learn and be themselves. And if you micromanage, you're going to be limited by. That's the key culture killer. Is micromanaging your business is a key culture killer. You need to let people have their head and manage on their own and let them make mistakes. A famous example of that, and I don't remember the company, but call it Jack Welch at General Electric, one of the most famous CEOs ever, most prestigious awarded CEO ever at General Electric. And he might have been the one. And a advertising executive came into his office and said, I screwed up. I cost us $100 million. He said, here's my resignation. And Jack Welch said to him, put that away. You have to, I consider that $100 million. I gave you $100 million education. You got to go out and make me that back and more. You have to go out and make me $300 million because of that mistake. So I consider that your education. And that's what culture is treating people respectfully. And too many CEOs treat their staff as slaves, and they don't try to. You got to do what I say. Just do what I say, and no matter what, just do what I say. And I believe that if both of us think alike, then no matter who it is on my staff, if both of us think alike, then one of us is useless. And since I'm the boss, I get to pick you. So I encourage people to speak up and give their opinion. I find that most of the improvements, and I believe that culture requires a commitment for improvement. That no system today is going to be effective 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 50 years from now, right? You're going to have to make improvement. And I believe that most of the improvements that we've made over my career, especially the last 30 years since I've had two public companies, most of the improvement comes from listening to people closest to the customer, that employees, franchisees, employees of franchisees, that I don't deal with customers. My companies have done 100 million tax returns. I do one tax return a year on October 15th, and I give that guy a great discount. I don't deal with customers. And so my job is big picture. You need to listen to the people that are closest to the customer. Because when I have a franchisee or a company location, it doesn't matter if I think they're doing a good job. It doesn't matter if the tax preparer thinks he's doing a good job. It only matters if the customer thinks you're doing a good job. So that's culture, is listening. And it's incredible. It's an incredible tool that most CEOs do most of the talking. This CEO listens and asks questions and learns from others. And I've been able to learn from the smartest person I ever met and from the dumbest person I ever met, right? Yet if you pay attention, you're going to be able to learn and build on things that you hear that others say. And sometimes, occasionally, they're exactly right. But oftentimes, the improvement, usually the improvement comes from a meeting of the minds. From I'll say one thing and they'll improve it, and they'll say another thing and I'll improve it. For example, I love our mission statement that I talked about, having fun improving lives. But when we first started, it was having fun changing lives. And one of my employees came to me one time and said, well, you could change lives, having fun in changing lives, you could change lives for the negative. I said, yeah. So we changed it. It wasn't my idea. Someone came forward, an employee, it came forward and said, let's change it. And so I don't remember if they said improving lives or not, but we changed it to improving lives at the advice of one of my employees. And so you need to listen to everyone in your life. So now, how do you build that? So that was the question. Okay, I think I've proven how important it is. Well, how do you build that? How do you live that? And that is, if it was easy, then every company would be a great company. I've never seen a company with a great culture that was a poor company, right? And the culture has to be exceeding customers' expectations. One of my favorite books was the Pink Goldfish, and by Stan Phelps. He's one of my favorite business authors. And in his book, he said, one of his books, I think that was the Goldfish, he said that no one arrives at a meeting exactly on time. You're either early or late. And if it's a 6 o'clock, last night I had a 6 o'clock dinner. So you either come at 5:55 or 5:40 or 6:03. No, almost no one arrives exactly at the strike of 6. They said in the same manner, you don't almost ever meet someone's expectations, a customer. You either exceed their expectations or fail to meet their expectations. So we have an unusual way of measuring our success. There are lots of other ways that people measure their customer satisfaction. And we measure it by the percentage of customers we exceed expectations. That's our key by analysis as to how we're doing. Knowing we're never going to exceed 100% of people's expectations. And we have to be committed to just get better at it. And you do that by listening, just as you listen to your employees and your franchisees, you listen to your customers. And because it doesn't matter, without customers, you don't need a board of directors, you don't need stockholders, you don't need CEO, you don't need staff. Customers pay all of our bills. And so they are predominant. They're the people that have to be happy, and we have to exceed their expectations. So that's what culture is building an organization that exceeds expectations. I've already alluded to what I learned in Wegmans. The first part about building culture is what I learned from that lady at Wegmans is you hire for attitude. Tom Watson Sr., one of the founders of IBM, said, give me 100 great engineers or 100 people with great attitude. I'll pick the people with 100 people with great attitude. You can teach engineering. One of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career, top 3, is trying to change people's attitudes. I've had incredibly skillful people, yet with bad attitude. And so because they were so skilled, we tried to save them. And it's been dozens of people, maybe 100 people. And I just never got it. I kept hitting my head against the wall. I could change their attitude for an hour, a day, a week, a month, but they pop right back into that bad attitude. Attitude isn't from without, it's from within. So the first part of building culture is to make sure that the people fit in the organization. Life's too short. You don't want to have to deal with toxic characters that are that upset yourself and others in the organization. If you want a good attitude, you have to have people with good attitude. You can't have 50% of the people with good attitude, 50% of the people with a bad attitude, and have a good culture. So it's obvious. First thing you do is you start by hiring for attitude. The second thing, and that's not that difficult to think about it and try to do it. The second thing, though, is, as I alluded to earlier, you're not always going to be right. And as I said, people that interview for jobs, that's like on the first date. They're the best they ever were in their life. And of course, if you ask anyone, you can't just ask someone, do you have a good attitude? Guess what everyone's going to say? 100% of people are going to say, yes, of course. So you have to ask them questions to illuminate whether they have that attitude or not. And sometimes, occasionally, I've even given people a internship, a temporary assignment, to see if they fit in before we hire them long term. If I have a question about whether that person can fit in, I'll say, you know what, I'm going to give you for the next 3 months, I'm going to give you one time with the CFO, I said, I'm going to give you an offer you can't refuse. I'm going to pay you exactly what you're asking for 6 months. You only have to work 20 hours a week. You can, if you find another, been looking for a job for over 6 months. If you find another job, keep looking, take it. But I want to see if you fit in with our organization. And he lasted for over a decade. Once we started, he lasted for over a decade. So um, you have to move quickly. And of course, one of the toughest things, if not the toughest thing of being an employer, of being a manager, or being a leader, is having to fire people. But people fire themselves. I had one person that worked for me, and I said, "I'm not firing you. You fired yourself. You're on the executive team and 4 of them hate you. I mean, I'm not firing you. You fired themselves. Your job is to get along and have respect and treat people with dignity and respect and listen to them. And if you can't do that, then you're in the wrong place. You need to go find somewhere else to be extraordinary. It's here with us." So it's as important or more important that when you've made a mistake, when you find people that are toxic and or destroying the culture, that you move them out of the organization as quickly as you can. And that's not easy. You have to decide what you can put up with, because Peter Drucker in The Effective Executive said people with huge strengths have huge weaknesses. And my favorite example of that is he uses the Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant philosophy. And he said, if you have great strengths and you instead of improving your strengths, you fight your weaknesses, then you become mediocre and not very effective. So he said, you need to find great people with great strengths that you can put up with their weaknesses. So it's not black and white on whether someone is toxic or not, right? There's no organization I've ever seen where 100% of the people like each other. Right? And I've been manager since 1971, and when I managed 10 block offices with 85 employees, not everyone liked each other. That doesn't mean that's not the definition of toxic, is not being liked, right? You have to be able to make a judgment decision. But if it's clear at some point that everyone is being turned off, or the significant number of people are turned off, and you never accept toxic behavior. What I did after I learned a lesson when 30 years ago, when I was with Jackson Hewitt on Sunday, I was in church, and the minister said, every one of us sins every day. And my first lesson was, wow, I get that I do, but he's admitting that he does. And that's amazing. It didn't occur to me until at least months later, probably 3 to 6 months later, that wait a minute, God has principles. We call them the 10 Commandments. And there's these 10 commandments. Now, if you're not going to listen to God and his 10 commandments, and you're going to violate them every day, then I said, what percentage of my 500 Jackson Hewitt employees are going to follow John Hewitt's 10 commandments, 10 principles every day? 0. And so I set about, I created a strategy to help solve that problem. And it was fairly effective. This helped us build culture. And what we did is we took the 10 principles and we made pads with it. And so each pad had the 10 principles on them, and we called them mission moments. Mission moments, because to meet our mission statement, to meet our principles. And had a place to put the employee's name, said employee blank, and the 10 principles with boxes, and you checked what principles and then you wrote what happened. So if someone violated the principles, you would put a check and say what they did that violated the principle. And if someone did a good job of meeting the principle, you would check the box and you would give them a mission moment. So I'll give you a couple examples of just things that happened. One time we had some kids in the parking lot, and they at night our parking lot abutted up to a forest. And some kids came in and they broke glass and they threw bottles down and broke glass in the parking lot. And turns out we eventually caught them, and the police caught them, turned them over to the police, but they were middle schoolers. And one of the employees who was on there, we have a lot of temporary assignments during the tax season, as you can imagine, because it's January 1st to April 15th. One of the employees, that it was his last day. It was like April 20th. And after the kids came and broke the glass in the parking lot, without anyone asking him to, he went out with a broom and a dustpan and was sweeping up the glass. Now, that person got a positive principle, right? Isn't that incredible that without him being asked on the last day of his assignment, he could have just been loafing off and fooling around and letting others do it. And he didn't even have to be told. He went out and did it. I had another one of my favorite examples, because my CFO went crazy because of what happened. I'm unfortunately at Jackson Hewitt, I let my CFO make a rule that you could only talk to our accounts receivable clerk or accounts payable clerk. A franchisee could only call between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. So one of my employees, a young girl, maybe in her 20s, I think last I heard she changed from Jackson Hewitt to Liberty Tax, but 30 years later, she's still with Liberty Tax. So she was with me for over 30 years. But someone got through, and a franchisee somehow snuck in and got through the phone system and called her about 4:15. And they're not allowed to talk to people except from 2 to 4. So she did the unprincipled thing. She followed policy versus principle. And that's the death of culture, is, again, there's policies and there's principles. When the two conflict, you follow the principle. And one of our principles, of course, is customers number one. Customers number one, right? And happy, successful franchisees. Well, she told that franchisee, "Oh, I can't talk to you. It's past 4:00. Call back tomorrow." And she hung up on them. And so one of the other executives wrote her up, and because in operations, the franchisee complained, as they should, and so another executive wrote her up and gave this low-level clerk a mission statement violation of principle. The CFO went crazy, came into my office and was arguing about it, because I guess he certainly wasn't principled. He liked his policy better than the customers, better than serving the customers. Can you imagine how little cost or little effort it would be one time to make an exception, and somehow the customer, the franchisee got through? One time you make an exception and talk to them. How's that going to make our company worse? Is that going to make our company, if you took the call, is it going to make our company better or worse or the same? I will contend it makes us better. And if you hang up, is it going to make our company better or worse or the same? And I contend that it's going to make us worse. So part of culture is understanding that you're going to be violating it all the time. And that, again, if we're going to violate God's principles, we're certainly going to violate, Jeremy, they're going to violate your principles and company principles. And they need to understand that. And all the employees just as God or Jesus or couldn't get everyone to follow their principles, you're not going to get everyone to follow your principle. But there are some that are going to help you and point out errors of others and so you applaud and reward the positive examples, and you mention the negative examples. That's key in culture. But the most important thing in culture, the most important thing is in building culture, this, and I'll say it this, that when only one time in my life, I'm a business person, I guess, and not a father person. So even though it's with me, it's God and family and business. But only one person, woman employee, came to me one time and said, okay, I'm about to have my first child. John, what's the most important advice? If you could only name one or two or three things of raising a child. And I've had six, so I have some experience, but I'm not Dr. Phil, so I'm not commonly asked parenting questions. But she came up to me and said that, and I thought about it. I didn't know the answer right away. I thought about it for a day or two and came back to her and said, number one, introduce them to God. And number two, set a good example. And so your culture is set by your example as a leader. People don't care what you say. They watch what you do. And so the only way to have a great culture is to be a leader that they can respect. And respect includes things like integrity. You know, the difference between honesty and integrity is, a lot of people say something like, oh, integrity is what you do when no one's watching. No, that's not integrity to me. Honesty is, if you ask me a question about the past, I tell an answer, and that's either honest or dishonest. But integrity is, and this is very, very rare, it's doing what you say you're going to do. Doing what you say you're going to do. I learned a lesson long, long ago in 30 years ago, that great salespeople, they paint this, they have no belief that it's going to happen, or they mistakenly believe. Maybe it's they have no commitment to make it happen. So success in life is simply doing what you say you're going to do. I talked about perseverance in the past, and that's one of the that's number one on my top 10. But number two is just simply doing what you say you're going to do. If you do that in your life, you're going to be successful in any relationship, in any business, in any situation. The key is just what you're going to do. And so the key to having a great culture starts and ends with you as a leader have to set an example. And you don't do that, then you're not going to have a great culture. You're going to be limited by your own inadequacies. So, and that is the premier, most important aspect of culture. So, again, culture is incredible. It's an incredible asset. Every great company, they were great, and some are still great, and some aren't. I mean, when I ask people, I often in large groups, tell me, let's agree on any company in America, national company, not a local company, a national company that is a great company, that offers great service. You know what? They never come. You get a group of 30 or 40 people or more, they can't come up with 10 great companies. Now, there are two that are always mentioned, and they usually win, like Chick-fil-A, or used to be Disney. I'm not sure it's Disney today after COVID, but it used to be Disney. There's just a few, Federal Express, that everyone can agree on. There are people that like individual companies. Some will say Walmart, and some will say I hate Walmart. Some will say Target, and some will say I hate Target. So There are very few great, extraordinary companies in this country ever. There's less and less every day. Our service in the country's declining every day of my life that I can remember. All of the great companies that I know, that I've seen perform at their pinnacle, at their peak, the Apple computer. I mean, they were great, still are great, right? They're a great service company, and they have a great culture. So you want to have a great business, it has to have a great culture. And of course, part of culture that kind of goes without saying is you have to have a growing company, have good culture. It is so incredibly different to maintain a positive culture in the face of decline. So, and I believe that in life, your life is either improving or declining. Your relationship with your spouse is either improving or declining. Your relationship with your children is either improving or declining. It never should be staying the same. That doesn't happen. You either, in your relationship with your employer, in your relationship with your customers, in your success of your business, it's you're either improving or declining. And so having culture will not only help you grow, but it will be, I mean, it's the chicken and the egg. The chicken, it's hard to determine. Why are you growing because of culture, or do you have a great culture because you're growing? But you have to set leadership. You have to hire for attitude. You have to get rid of people when they don't meet up to your performance, and you have to grow. There's no other way to have a great culture. So I want to wrap it up in a minute. And anyone have any last questions before I wrap it up? And I thank you for listening and paying attention. And hopefully I'm helpful. I'm here to mentor. And again, the mission statement of this webinar is the same mission statement of our company. And that is having fun, improving lives. I don't see any last questions, so I'm going to wrap it up. And everyone have a great afternoon, and talk to you next week. Bye now.